My 30s F, mom 60s F. Married her husband Jay, 60s M, about 5 years ago. On their very first date, he made a point to tell her, "You're the biggest woman I've ever dated," and made a joke that she could order any salad you like. No one in my family has ever particularly liked Jay. My mom has always struggled with her weight, as has her mom and sisters. She grew up with her mom hating herself all her life for being fat. Then, while I was growing up, it seemed to always be a subject of conversation, and they would always talk about new ways they are trying to lose weight. Her weight has always fluctuated, but my mom isn't really that big. She is active and relatively healthy without high blood pressure, diabetes, or anything like that. She is overweight, but not obese. Jay is also overweight. I know in a relationship it's important to be attracted to your partner, but the way he is going about it is completely out of line, in my opinion. He tells her what she can and can't eat, berates her for things she does eat and buys at the store, and gives unsolicited advice on how she can lose weight. Understandably, this has caused my mom to talk about her weight constantly to us, saying she's fat and needs to stop eating, sew her mouth shut, etc. Meanwhile, he does not do anything to actually help, like go on walks with her, try to work out or cook with her, anything like that. To be clear, my mom still tries. She wears makeup, does her hair, goes on walks, and works out. She dresses nice. My point is, she's the same woman he married, except just a little older. I have told them how this has impacted me. I have Hashimoto's disease and have struggled with weight loss since my early 20s. I have body dysmorphia and have struggled a lot with my self-worth and value as a person because of my appearance and weight. Last year, I managed to lose 10 pounds, 20 pounds total since 2020. I've kept it off for 8 months now. I've tried to tell my mom how detrimental it is to be mean and punish yourself for what you eat, and how she should reevaluate her relationship with food and see a therapist because I believe she has binge eating disorder. It goes in one ear and out the other. She just smiles, shakes her head, and dismisses me. She says, "I just need to stop eating so much. I need to stop shoveling food into my fat mouth." Recently, when I was visiting, Jay told her that a healthy weight for her would be 140 pounds. I'm looking at him sideways because that's 3 pounds more than what I weigh, and I'm 2 inches shorter than her. On a body mass index chart, I would be at the high end of normal, very close to overweight. But I consider myself to be in very good shape. I have more body fat than I would like, but I am working on it, and I have built up a lot of muscle. That was the day I came over and requested pizza, but instead, even though she asked me what I wanted, she cooked some chicken nuggets, which everyone knows are way healthier per S. Jay berated her for buying a huge bag of almonds from Costco, you know what I'm talking about, because they are high in calories and fat. He has given me unsolicited advice, especially when I was heavier, like weigh yourself every day, count your calories, opt for low-fat, sugar-free, etc. He brings up my husband's weight a lot and tells me ways my husband should lose weight, and asks me about my husband's diet and if he's lost weight. This grinds my gears a lot, as none of us deserve to be treated like our weight determines our value and worth as human beings. It's like his entire personality is the guy who gives great advice to people on how to lose weight, and his life depends on keeping an audience. Yesterday, my mom told me she went to YouTube on the TV and saw the search history where Jay typed in, "How to get your wife to lose weight." She said LOL, but I don't think she thought it was funny. She never addresses how his words impact her because it will embarrass him or hurt his feelings. I consider myself to be an understanding person, but I'm at the point where I don't really care about his feelings. He's hurting other people's feelings and not being held accountable. He's making my mom feel like she's not worthy of love because of her weight. She even had a weight loss procedure done, Obra, which worked, but she immediately gained weight back after having it removed. She never even told her husband she'd had this done. Now for an update, this has kind of turned into a rant session. I feel that his negativity is damaging not only to my mom, but me as well. I've worked extremely hard to change my relationship with food, and it's working really well. But every time I go over there, I find myself feeling gross, like he is judging me or going to say something about my husband's size. My therapist suggested telling my mom I'm not going to go to her house if Jay is there. He is there most of the time. But, like my mom, I worry about hurting my mom's feelings. I also don't like being mean to people, but maybe it would be beneficial to tell Jay exactly the reason I won't be going over there. I don't see him ever looking inward, though. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. This is toxic behavior, and he's old enough to know better. Change is unlikely, to say the least. He is projecting his own insecurities and putting others down to feel better about himself, and reinforcing your mom's insecurities to keep his position secure. Very nasty. Ultimately, you can support both you and your mom by cutting him out of your life. The more people waving big red flags at your mom, the better. Hopefully, she at least stops trying to appease this guy. It will never end because it's his own insecurity that is the problem. And of course, hopefully she leaves and finds better. Comment 2. That was hard to read. I'd give it hard back to him. How is your diet going? You look chubbier than the last time I saw you. You are eating too much. Jay, did you shower today? You smell weird. And every time he is eating, that is too much food. You've already eaten too much today. That will make you even fatter, and haha. You know you are already bigger than you should be. Be mean. Be ruthless. Don't even try to be nice. He's a massive jerk and will probably get ugly when it's turned back on him. Now for the update. Thanks for all the comments from my last post. So 3 days ago, I decided to take my therapist's advice and told my mom that I wouldn't be coming over if Jay was around. She seemed taken aback at first, but I think she understood where I was coming from. I didn't want to hurt her feelings, but I needed to protect my own mental health. She didn't say much, just nodded and said she'd think about it. The next day, my mom called me and said she wanted to meet for coffee, just the two of us. I agreed and we met at our favorite cafe. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept well. She told me that she had talked to Jay about my decision. Apparently, he was furious and accused me of trying to drive a wedge between them. My mom said she tried to explain how his comments were affecting us, but he just got defensive and stormed out of the house. She was visibly upset, and I felt terrible for putting her in that position. But I also felt a sense of relief that she was finally addressing the issue. Later that evening, my mom called again, this time sounding more composed. She said Jay had come back and they had a long talk. He apologized for his behavior, but she wasn't sure if he really understood the impact of his words. She said she needed some time to think about everything and asked if I could give her some space. I agreed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still off. The following day, I got a call from my aunt. She told me that my mom had confided in her about everything that was going on. My aunt was furious and said she was going to have a talk with Jay herself. I asked her to hold off, not wanting to escalate things further, but she was adamant. She said she couldn't stand by and watch her sister be treated this way. I appreciated her support, but I was also worried about how Jay would react. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my mom and how she must be feeling. I decided to go for a walk to clear my head. As I was walking, I got a text from my mom. She said she had found something in Jay's office that she needed to talk to me about. My heart sank and I rushed over to her house. When I got there, she showed me a folder she had found in Jay's desk. It was filled with printouts of articles and forum posts about controlling a partner's weight. Some of the advice was downright hurtful. My mom looked devastated. I didn't know what to say. She said she felt like she didn't know Jay anymore and didn't know what to do. We sat in silence for a while, and then she asked me what I thought she should do. I told her that she needed to do what was best for her, but that I would support her no matter what. She nodded and said she needed some time to think. I hugged her and told her I loved her, then left. The next day, my mom called me and said she had made a decision. She was going to confront Jay and tell him that his behavior was unacceptable. She said she didn't know what would happen, but that she couldn't continue living like this. I told her I was proud of her and that I would be there for her no matter what. That evening, my mom called again. She said she had confronted Jay and that he had reacted badly. He accused her of snooping and said she was overreacting. My mom said she stood her ground and told him that she couldn't stay in a relationship where she was constantly belittled and controlled. Jay stormed out of the house, and my mom said she didn't know where he went. The next day, my mom called me and said Jay had come back and apologized again. He said he was willing to go to therapy to work on his issues. My mom said she was willing to give him one more chance, but that she had set some clear boundaries. She said she wasn't sure if it would work, but that she wanted to try. As for me, I've been trying to process everything that's happened. It's been a lot to take in, and I'm still not sure how I feel about Jay. Part of me wants to believe that he can change, but another part of me is skeptical. I guess only time will tell. In the meantime, I've been focusing on my own health and well-being. I've been going to therapy regularly and working on my relationship with food. It's been a struggle, but I'm making progress. I just hope that my mom can find the strength to do the same. Thanks for reading. Aita for calling out my boyfriend's annoying grammar corrections in front of everyone. I think the word to describe my boyfriend would be pedantic, at least sometimes, and it's driving me nuts. Often he will ignore the bulk of what I'm saying to focus on the way I pronounced a word, a mumble, the tense I said something, and etc. You get the point. He does this in front of people too, and no, he is not autistic. He does this more when he's in a bad mood. An example of this is this morning, I learned about Chevron being overturned and explained it to him. He didn't really know about it, and after dinner today I said, "Oh, I found a video that would better explain it. It's really been on my mind." He says, "How? You just learned about it today, how can it really be on your mind?" Kind of scoffed at me. I said, "I mean, like today, I've been thinking about it and researching it because I find it concerning." He says, "Okay, well then you need to say today, because otherwise you're making this grandiose expression of concern." I said, "That really isn't the point." And he said, "I feel like if it was that concerning to you, then you would have known about it before today." I'm like, why are we arguing about whether I find it genuinely concerning? Does he think I'm talking about it to appear intelligent or something? At this point, I'm getting annoyed and don't want to show him the video anymore because it doesn't seem like he cared to begin with. And now I'm just irritated. Another time I was showing him a short clip of a scene from a show I like, 8 seconds. I scroll down and show him the next one. He says, "Why are you showing me these? What is the purpose?" I told him, "I just told you this was one of my favorite scenes and I liked them." He says, "You didn't like these videos. There's no 'liked' on it." I tell him, "No, not like that. I just enjoy them and like them in that way." He says, "Okay, well, what do you want me to say?" and stares at me blankly. Earlier, I said a sentence to the effect of, "My brother very courageously helped save someone." And before I could finish my sentence, he said, "That isn't the way you would insert courageously into a sentence. You don't need the very there." I am just blinking. I go, "Okay, so anyways," and keep talking. And he goes on his phone to show me why the sentence structure is wrong, completely ignoring me. I point out that he is ignoring me, and he puts his phone down and listens. As soon as I stop talking, he says nothing to the story I just told him, and goes back to explain why I should care about how I speak, and that people have gotten so lazy these days. Sometimes I feel like there will be a last straw where this bothers me too much. Some days I get really annoyed and wish I'd never said anything. I am a pretty laid-back person, and I do not care about these things in others. I don't know if this is normal behavior that I am intolerant to, and I need to work on being more accepting of feedback and lessons I don't want. Or if my boyfriend has a problem with needing to be right or informative all the time. Could it be that he is annoyed with me and trying to irritate me by doing this? It seems like he is aware that it bothers me, yet can't stop. So I feel like it's either a deeply ingrained personality trait or intentionally annoying. How can I best respond to situations like these? Saying I don't like it confuses him and usually causes him to start defending himself and making even more points. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, end it. He is a complete jerk. Very disrespectful. He is like a passive-aggressive Grammarly in human form. It doesn't sound as though he likes or respects you. He has a superiority complex. And that is incredibly unattractive in my book. Comment 2, does he police other people this way? I bet he doesn't. He polices your speech to feel superior. Him feeling superior to you matters more to him than making you feel respected and heard. Now, for the update. Thanks for reading my last post. So, a lot has happened in the past 3 months, and it's been quite a ride. First off, I decided to have a serious talk with my boyfriend about his pedantic behavior. I thought maybe if I laid it all out, he'd understand how much it was bothering me. We sat down one evening after dinner and I calmly explained how his constant corrections and nitpicking were affecting me. I told him it made me feel belittled and unheard. He listened quietly, which was a good sign, but then he said, "I'm just trying to help you improve. Why is that a bad thing?" That response made me realize he genuinely didn't see the problem. A couple of weeks later, we were at a friend's birthday party. Everything was going fine until I started telling a story about a recent work project. Mid-sentence, he interrupted me to correct my grammar in front of everyone. I felt humiliated. Our friends looked uncomfortable, and one of them even said, "Come on, man, let her finish." That was a turning point for me. I realized it wasn't just a quirk. It was affecting my social life and how others perceived me. After that incident, I started noticing other things. He wasn't just pedantic with me. He did it with everyone. At a family dinner, he corrected his mom's pronunciation of a word. She laughed it off, but I could see the annoyance in her eyes. It was like he couldn't help himself. I began to wonder if this was something deeper, maybe a control issue, or an insecurity on his part. Then came the event that changed everything. One evening, we were watching a documentary about climate change. I made a comment about how alarming the statistics were, and he immediately jumped in to correct my use of the word alarming. I snapped. I told him I couldn't take it anymore, and that his constant corrections were driving a wedge between us. He looked genuinely shocked and hurt. For the first time, he didn't have a comeback. He just sat there, silent. The next day, he apologized. He said he didn't realize how much it was affecting me, and that he would try to be more mindful. I appreciated the apology, but I was skeptical. Could he really change? Over the next few weeks, I noticed he was making an effort. He still slipped up occasionally, but he caught himself and apologized immediately. It was a small improvement, but it gave me hope. However, the real test came when we went on a weekend trip to visit his old college friends. I was nervous, wondering if he'd revert to his old ways. Surprisingly, he was on his best behavior. He didn't correct anyone, even when there were obvious mistakes. I could see it was hard for him, but he was trying. His friends noticed too, and commented on how relaxed he seemed. It was like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. During that trip, I learned more about his past. His dad was a strict, no-nonsense type who always demanded perfection. Growing up, my boyfriend was constantly corrected and criticized. It made sense why he turned out the way he did. It wasn't an excuse, but it helped me understand him better. He wasn't trying to be a jerk. He was just repeating the behavior he grew up with. Back home, things were better, but not perfect. He still had his moments, but they were less frequent. I started to see a different side of him, one that was more vulnerable and willing to change. It wasn't easy for him, and I appreciated the effort he was making. I also realized I needed to be more patient and supportive. Change doesn't happen overnight. One day, while we were cooking dinner together, he asked me how my day was without correcting a single thing I said. It felt like a breakthrough. We had a real conversation, and I felt heard for the first time in a long while. It was a small victory, but it meant a lot to me. But before I get into that, there was another incident that tested our progress. We were at a family gathering, and his uncle made a factual error while telling a story. I saw my boyfriend tense up, ready to jump in and correct him. I gently squeezed his hand, and he stayed quiet. Later, he told me it was one of the hardest things he'd ever done, but he was glad he did it. It showed me he was serious about changing. As for me, I've been working on my own issues too. I realized I needed to be more assertive and not let things fester until they exploded. I started setting boundaries and communicating more openly. It wasn't just about him changing, it was about us growing together. So, where do we stand now? We're still a work in progress, but we're getting there. The pedantic behavior hasn't disappeared completely, but it's manageable. We've both learned a lot about ourselves and each other. It's been a challenging few months, but I'm hopeful for the future. Thanks for reading. Aita for refusing to stay with my boyfriend who chose Zaza over our relationship. My boyfriend, 34-year-old male, and I started dating almost 2 years ago. Before we became a couple, I told him that for personal reasons, I do not want to have another relationship with someone who smokes Zaza. At this time, my boyfriend did not smoke or use edibles at all, and I knew this. He assured me that even though he smoked daily in the past, it was not part of his life anymore, and he did not foresee smoking daily again in the future. For context, my boyfriend and I lived together. About 5 months ago, he started smoking every day. He would come home from work and smoke half a joint, and then have some puffs of a Delta 8 pen throughout the evening. I addressed my surprise with him and reminded him that this is not something I want in a relationship. But he basically told me to please just let him do this, because it wasn't affecting his work performance, and he didn't seem totally blasted while smoking. I decided to compromise and just accept this level of daily usage. Fast forward to now, he is smoking and eating edibles all day, every day. While at work, he smokes Delta 8 from a pen. When he comes home, he smokes a joint. A couple of hours later, he eats an edible. A few hours later, he smokes another joint. Doesn't seem to be affecting his work performance still, but he definitely seems altered around me. And that is what I did not want. He is such an exuberant person. Enthusiastic, emotive, funny, and so vibrant. His vocal tones, his facial expressions, they are so expressive. And I absolutely love this about him. Now that he's using Zaza 24/7, all of this has been dampened. His emotional range has flattened. His excitement is not as intense. He kind of has one dimension to his emotions/personality now. He's not unpleasant, he just seems like a shell of himself. I addressed all of this with him, and he does not want to cut back at all. But he said he will try to cut back, to make me happy. He is going to continue smoking Delta 8 all day at work, but will try smoking half a joint and using one edible when he gets home. To me, that still seems like a lot, but I am trying so hard to compromise. So I agreed to trying that solution and checking in with each other to determine how it feels. In the meantime, I am an emotional wreck. I have no appetite. I am feeling stressed and nervous. I am crying and losing control of my emotions in front of him. I try to talk more about the issue and just end up sobbing hysterically. I feel like this relationship is doomed, and I want desperately for it to work out. I will note that he has struggled with several drug addictions in the past, non-prescribed Adderall, opioids, and nitrous oxide, and has been able to quit them all. But he did agree that one could technically say that he is addicted to Zaza. He has an addictive personality and very, very intense anxiety. He takes a low dose of prescribed Xanax every day for his anxiety. I'm sure the Zaza is a form of self-medication, but I fear it's totally screwing up his perception of fun, enjoyment, and gratification. Like, he can't achieve those things anymore unless he's smoked or eaten an edible. Now for an update. He said he wants to start therapy. Has anyone been in a similar situation, and if so, what compromise did you reach? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Hello. I am a clinical psychologist specializing in anxiety and substance use disorders. Your boyfriend needs therapy for his anxiety disorder and substance use disorder. Unfortunately, you cannot force him to seek help. I understand that you love him, but staying with someone while they are in addiction only prolongs the problem. It is time to enforce your previously stated boundary. Take a break from the relationship and move somewhere else until he can meet your needs, such as quitting smoking. You are suffering greatly, and this dynamic is not working. Only you can decide whether to continue suffering or make a change. If you need support, feel free to send me a direct message. Good luck. Comment 2. You do not want a relationship with him if he is affected by Zaza. He does not want to change his relationship with Zaza. How can there be a compromise? It seems pretty clear-cut. You have already compromised your own boundaries by getting into a relationship with him before he started using Zaza habitually. Now you are only trying to find ways to keep compromising your boundaries to accommodate his behavior. Now for the update. Hey everyone, a lot has happened since my last post. So after our last conversation, my boyfriend did try to cut back on his Zaza usage. For the first week, he stuck to smoking half a joint and using one edible when he got home. It was a small improvement, but I could still see that he was struggling. His mood swings were more noticeable, and he seemed more irritable than usual. I tried to be supportive, but it was hard to see him like that. One evening, about 2 weeks into this new arrangement, he came home from work looking more stressed than usual. He told me that his boss had noticed his change in behavior and had asked if everything was okay. This was a wake-up call for him. He realized that his Zaza usage was starting to affect his work performance, even if it wasn't obvious to everyone else. He decided to take a few days off work to clear his head and figure out what he wanted to do next. During his time off, he started going to therapy. His therapist suggested that he try to find other ways to manage his anxiety, like exercise or meditation. He was skeptical at first, but he agreed to give it a try. He started going for runs in the morning and doing yoga in the evening. It was a slow process, but I could see that he was starting to feel better. He was more present, more engaged, and more like his old self. However, things took a turn when he ran into an old friend from his party days. This friend invited him to a party, and despite my concerns, he decided to go. He promised me that he wouldn't smoke or take any edibles, but when he came home that night, it was clear that he had broken that promise. He was high, and it was like all the progress we had made over the past few weeks had been undone. I was devastated. I felt like I couldn't trust him anymore. We had a huge fight, and he ended up sleeping on the couch that night. The next morning, he apologized and said that he had made a mistake. He promised that he would never do it again, but I wasn't sure if I could believe him. We decided to take a break from each other to figure out what we wanted. He went to stay with his parents for a week, and I stayed at our apartment. During that time, I did a lot of thinking. I realized that I couldn't keep compromising my own happiness for the sake of our relationship. I needed to set boundaries and stick to them. When he came back, we had a long talk. I told him that I couldn't be in a relationship with someone who was using Zaza every day. He said that he understood and that he was willing to quit for good. He even showed me a list of goals that he had made with his therapist, which included quitting Zaza and finding healthier ways to manage his anxiety. For the next few weeks, things were good. He was sticking to his goals, and our relationship was starting to feel normal again. But then, one night, I found a stash of edibles hidden in his drawer. I confronted him about it, and he admitted that he had been using them in secret. He said that he was sorry and that he didn't want to lose me, but I felt like I had reached my breaking point. I told him that he needed to make a choice, me or the Zaza. He said that he loved me and that he wanted to be with me, but I could see the hesitation in his eyes. It was like he was torn between two parts of himself. I knew that this was the moment that would test his true loyalties. He decided to go back to therapy and to start attending support group meetings for people with addiction issues. He said that he wanted to prove to me that he could change, but I was still skeptical. I knew that it would take time for me to trust him again, and I wasn't sure if I was willing to wait. In the meantime, I started seeing a therapist myself. I needed to figure out what I wanted and what I was willing to accept in a relationship. I realized that I had been putting his needs before my own for too long, and that I needed to take care of myself first. As for his backstory, I learned more about his struggles with addiction. He told me about how he had started using drugs in college to cope with his anxiety and how it had spiraled out of control. He had managed to quit other drugs, but Zaza had always been his crutch. It was a way for him to escape from his problems, but it was also preventing him from truly dealing with them. I also learned more about his family history. His father had struggled with addiction as well, and it had caused a lot of pain and turmoil in their family. He didn't want to repeat the same mistakes, but he was finding it hard to break the cycle. In the end, we decided to give our relationship another chance. He continued with therapy and support group meetings, and I continued to set boundaries and take care of myself. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments of doubt and frustration, but we were both committed to making it work. Thank you for reading. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.